Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. I am showing you today a compilation of my 11 fall and Halloween DIYs. In case you haven't seen them, I hope you enjoyed this video and I'll see you next time. Let's jump right in. So we're going to start with this cute leaf thankful sign. So I've got this cute leaf tray from Dollar Tree as well as these loose leaves and some metal signs that came with it. Came with 3. And I'm just using some brown paint that I had on hand as well as my hot glue gun. First, we're going to flip it over and take off that label because we are actually going to be working with the back of the leaf. So I'm squirting my brown paint onto my messy acrylic paper plate, which you've seen before, and I'm using this chippy brush and my drink to cover up the back of that leaf. I am just doing little strokes everywhere to make it nice and textured. I thought about spray painting this, but I thought that the textured look would give it an extra special touch and kind of go with the theme of this fall, like pile of leaves type of look. So here I am making sure to cover that whole leaf. Again, just using quick short strokes with my chippy brush, and it will give it a nice texture. The silver shows through a bit, but it's not as bright or shiny as it was originally. Make sure you take a second look and get all of the edges of your leaf. Here's what we've got so far, and we are just going to let it dry before we do anything else. After several minutes, our leaf is finally dry. Guys, I totally need a heat gun to dry my stuff. It takes forever otherwise. Now I'm taking those little loose leaves that I've gotten from the Dollar Tree and arranging them to see where I want them to cover my leaf, and then I'll place my sign on top of that. So I like to have a nice variety of color and also a little bit of balance, so I'm just placing them where I think they might look good. Then I'm taking my thankful sign and debating where I want to put it. Once I've done that, I start to glue my leaves down. I'm using my hot glue gun to do this, really carefully not to burn myself. As you know, I burn myself a lot, but I was pretty good during this one, so I'm feeling good about just laying the glue on and just barely tapping it. We are just going to zoom through this leaf gluing process. Zooma, 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 zoom, zoom, zoom. Anybody remember that? No, just me. Okay. Well, now that they've all been glued, looking cute, we are going to get our thankful sign ready. So again, I'm imagining where exactly I want to place it. And then I realized that I felt like it didn't have enough contrast or it didn't stand out enough. So I'm taking a little bit of white paint onto my messy plate and then taking a small brush, dabbing off some of the paint and just loosely painting it. I'm essentially just using the dry brushing technique by dabbing my brush in a little bit of white paint and then rubbing it off on my paper towel or napkin before painting it onto my sign. I don't want it to be completely opaque. I just kind of want a nice hazy white paint on top of it just to give it a little bit of texture and again to help it stand out in front of my leaf sign. So here you see I am just making sure to cover every little inch of my sign before getting ready to glue it. All right, she is ready. I'm taking my hot glue gun, again, making sure I'm putting it in the right place and just carefully adding glue in a few spots. I don't want my glue to ooze out of the sides of my sign, so I'm being very careful to just add a few little dots here and there. Once I've got it laid down, I just make sure that any kind of pieces that are lifting up are secured by gluing those little edges down as well. So I was lucky enough to have this multicolored yarn right next to my crafting station. It's got a bunch of different colors, but they're all kind of toned down or more fall type colors with some burgundies, some toned down greens, yellows, etc. So I'm taking a piece of that, cutting it, then I knotted it, and now I'm just flipping over my sign and gluing it in place. This is going to be helpful to hang our piece. So you just want to put a little bit of hot glue, dab it on there, and she is done. Look at how freaking good she turned out. Amazing. Love it. Cute little thankful sign. Thank you, Dollar Tree. Thank you, Moscow Mule. Our second sign is this cute little sequin spooky sign. I found this funny framed yum sign at Dollar Tree. Thought it would be perfect because of its orange ribbon and orange sequins. Ignore that blue paint because I don't end up using it, but I do use the purple and the white paint. So I am just going to peel off the back of this, which ended up being easier than I expected. I really didn't end up needing my craft knife whatsoever. So I just peel it off with my bare hands and it comes right off. Then I need a sip of my drink before I can move on, which would be taking out that back part of the frame. So I'm just lifting up those little metal pieces and taking out both that almost cardboard-like piece and the piece of paper. I'm going to carefully take my sequins and pour them into this little sandwich Ziploc bag so I can save them for later and then put them in. This is the worst freaking part of this craft and this video. I tried so hard to get that yum sign off. I thought for sure alcohol will just rub it right off. So I tried and tried. Oop, no success there. And I literally didn't give up. I tried numerous methods. Scratching it with my X-Acto knife works, but that seems like it would take forever. So here I am dousing it in it, thinking that maybe that'll help if it's really soaked in there. And then I try some pure acetone. Alcohol won't work. Acetone, right? Nope. Google told me soap and water would work. Nope, that didn't work either. So I literally ended up having to use my X-Acto knife and scratch off every single bit of this. This took forever. Once I scraped it all off, I could still see little tiny bits of the white. So I'm using this glittery acrylic medium on the glass in the corner where the yum was. And I think it'll give it some dimension anyways because it'll be behind the rest of the painting that I do and add a nice sparkle in addition to our sequins. So I'm just taking that nice glitter glue, glitter acrylic medium, whatever you want to call it, and spreading it throughout. And this helps distract it from those little tiny white marks that I really had a hard time scraping off with my X-Acto knife. Look how cute and sparkly. Keep in mind, all that gooey stuff is going to dry clear. So it looks a little lumpy now, but for the most part, it is looking cute. Now I'm using that piece of paper that was in the background of the original framed piece, and I'm using some purple crafter's paint on it. You could, of course, use some cute Halloween or plain colored cardstock, but I didn't have any on hand, so I decided to just use paint. So I'm spreading it throughout the piece of paper and eventually realizing that it is not covering well. Once I realize that this is not going to cover in one or even probably two layers, I've decided to add a little bit of white onto my paper. Adding white to any color helps make it a little bit more opaque. So that's what I'm doing here, is just setting another layer and letting that dry. Sip, 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 bottoms up. Alright, she's finally dry, so I am adding, again, another layer of my purple paint to the background of this spooky sign project. While that's drying, I am going to paint the front of my frame. So now I'm painting on the front of the glass, and I'm using white paint and a thin brush to make some spider webs. I do one spider web in each corner, making one a little larger than the other, just for a little bit of asymmetry so it's not looking a little too matchy-matchy. So each spider web I've got on here has 4 or more lines going down to the corners, and then what I do is continue with my white paint and just make some curved, I don't know, concave, convex, I don't know, some U-ish shapes to connect all the pieces of the webs together. You can see that I do several layers of this for each one of them. And we are just going to speed it up for the second one since you kind of got an idea from the first one. I'll do another mini spiderweb in the next project, but hopefully you can kind of get the idea from this one of how to connect all those lines that are pointing to the corner of our picture frame. We're going to let that white part dry for a few minutes, and once it is completely dry, we're going to use a small brush again with some black paint and start spelling out the word spooky. You can, of course, use a Cricut with some vinyl if you wanted to. I just decided to hand paint this on because I really like the homemade kind of look to it. So here I am just painting out the letters for the word spooky. I kind of like this tall, thin technique. I thought it would help fill up a little more space and look really cute in this instance. Make sure that you take a close look after you do the whole thing and fill in any space where it may not look full. Here is the progress so far. And now we finally get to add our sequins back in. So I'm dumping them into the back of the frame and then placing our dry piece of purple paper on top of that, as well as that hard cardboard piece. And then once you grab your drink, you can move on to closing that up and hot gluing the back of the thinner cardboard. It's almost like craft paper, but a little bit thicker. So again, you're just going to use your hot glue and go around all the edges, gluing that back on. Make sure you just do it section by section so that the glue doesn't dry too fast. You want to make sure everything sticks. So I did the upper part first, and now as you can see, I'm gluing the rest of it. Again, so I avoid burning myself, I'm going to use some scissors to help lay it nice and flat on the back of our piece. Look how stinking cute this turned out. I love it. Obviously, like, the sequins only move if you shake them, but I don't care. It's cute. She's cute. You can also even, like, if you want to do, like, paint a little spider crawling up here, whatever. Hang it up, lean it on a shelf. Love it. So cute. On to the next one. 100% that which even when I'm crying crazy. Okay, this one was totally inspired by Lizzo, if you guys know the song Truth Hurts, but it's the Halloween version. So I took this little sign I got from the Crafter's Square at Dollar Tree and some black paint. We are going to start by taking out our twine or rope that's hanging it up because we don't want to get paint on there by accident. Once we've gotten that off, we can finally start to paint our sign. We are just going to paint the front. Back doesn't really matter since it would be hanging up against the wall or whatever else. But you can just take some plain black paint and cover this whole thing. I totally need to jump on the Waverly chalk paint thing because I don't own any and I see it in every Dollar Tree DIY. But for the meantime, just using plain acrylic black paint that I got from a craft store. Make sure you get all of those edges too. Now I'm taking this cutout that I created on my Cricut saying 100% that witch, and I am making sure that I like the positioning. My lazy way of measuring it is I'm just going to put tape on all four sides of my sign and then place it in the middle of all of that. So once you've gotten all of your edges taped up nice, you know that it will be centered once you lay it down. So here I am placing it on top of that, realizing that the edges go over the sides of the blue tape, which is fine. I'm just going to carefully peel those off before pressing my vinyl down. I didn't feel like getting that scraper thing, so I'm just using the back of a bottle of paint to press down all of my letters and making sure that they are nice and stuck to my sign. And then I'm very carefully peeling up my transfer tape, just a little bit at a time, which was actually the easiest part of all this. I am totally still learning how to use Cricut because it is hard, for me at least. Now, again, being lazy, and I see that little spot, so I'm just going to use my finger and some black paint to cover it up because I had already washed my brushes. Once that's dry, I'm just using regular Elmer's glue and creating a thin border following the shape of my sign. Once I've gotten that entire border covered with a thin line of glue, I'm using some fun fuchsia purplish glitter and sprinkling it all over my sign. Admittedly, I should have put a paper down underneath it ahead of time, but I eventually realized that that would be smart so that I can shake all the loose glitter back into my jar. I do end up doing that off screen, you just don't see it here. So once I have shaken off all of that glitter and let it dry because we don't want to smudge that Elmer's glue, I'm taking a paintbrush, a dry paintbrush, and just brushing off any loose glitter. Then I'm using some, actually this is fabric paint, but you could totally use puffy paint. This ends up drying puffy anyways, but I happen to have it already on hand. So I'm using some silver glitter puffy fabric paint, which looks really foggy now, but it ends up drying nice and clear with just the sparkles showing. I make, again, a little spider web on the bottom of my sign, and to help balance it out, I make a miniature one on the top of my sign as well. You can see I'm connecting all those little tiny U shapes again. After a few hours, it will finally be dry, unless I had a heat gun, and I am taping the edges of that twine that came with the sign to stick it back through the holes. So I do this with both sides of each string, sticking them through the front of the sign. Once I have done that, I can just pull off my tape and tie a little knot onto each end so that they don't come loose if I pull on the string. Here is our sign. Look how cute it turned out. Love it. Okay, so here's the materials we're using today. We've got some fabric paints. I believe they're from Folk Art. I bought them off Amazon as a set. I've got my tulip glitter puffy fabric paint, and yeah. So before I do anything else, I'm actually just going to take my sweatshirt. I bought this in a size men's small at Dollar General. You can also buy just crew neck sweatshirts at Walmart. What you want to do is just make sure you buy one that's at least a size bigger than you. So I'm a size small, medium in women, so I thought a men's small would fit just fine. I compared it against my body ahead of time and figured out where I want to crop it so that it's a little bit shorter but not too short or revealing. So I just cropped it there. Now I'm taking my scissors and pressing down pretty hard to make these distress marks all over my sweatshirt. I do this quite a bit, and I end up adding more in the shoulders later, which you'll see. There you can see a close-up of how those distress marks look on the sweatshirt. Next, we are going to just cut little slits into the sleeves. There goes my cat Kobe. He really wanted to be part of this. I call him my creative director, so he's just making sure it's all coming together. Anyways, cut those little slits. It just kind of helps bring consistency to this distressed look in our sweatshirt project. So once you have the right amount of distress that you want, you are going to start taking your fabric paints here. I am using pink fabric paint primarily, a little bit of blue because I wanted it to be have a little bit of a purple tone and a little bit of white to help lighten it up. I have used these fabric paints before and noticed that they come out a little bit darker or harder to see, hence adding the white. So I'm using a round sponge brush here, and I'm just kind of dabbing it in there, trying to get those colors to mix the way I want them to. They were coming out pretty separated, so I twisted it in there several times. And what I'm going to do is actually just create a set of flowers. Here's where I realized I should probably use cardboard or something in between the layers of my sweatshirt, so I'm just using an old paper bag from a grocery store and laying that in between each layer. Here I am pretending to be a YouTuber and focusing my sponge, which didn't work. And I'm just going to set 3 dots of these onto my sweatshirt. They almost make kind of like a little triangle. And so you can't tell from here, but I did realize that the twisting method isn't working so great for me. This is a method I've used with face painting, which is actually why I have this sponge. But with the fabric paint and the fabric, it does drag and make a little bit of an inconsistent shape. So I realized at some point to just dab it instead. So here I'm recreating it because it's not quite as colorful as I'd like for it to be. So I am remixing those. See, those twists are just getting me all sorts of crazy. Look at those weird faces. Oh my gosh, who knew I made those? Anyways, so until I'm happy with that, I'm just going to keep taking my fabric paint and dabbing it onto my sweatshirt. Apparently Kobe thought this would be a great opportunity to play, so here he is attacking my poor project as I stepped away to get a different brush. So I'm now going to take a smaller brush and some green paint so I can start to create some leaves. There I am pretending I know how to focus. And so yeah, I just start to use that and creating little leaf shapes. Ta-da! So here is a better kind of close-up shot of me painting the leaves again with this green fabric paint. And I like for them to have a little curvature to them, so I'm making sure that they're a little wider at the bottom and have a little bit of a wave before they reach their nice little tippy top point. I do 3 leaves in total, so 1 in each of those intersections or crevices where the flowers meet. And don't worry, we're going to add an extra detail to the flowers. They're not just going to be plain circles. But yeah, here you can see how I paint the leaves around them, and we will add a small detail to those as well. Next, we're going to take some black fabric paint, ta-da, it focused, and an even thinner brush, if you have one, put it in my little tray here. Some of those extra colors, by the way, are from an old watercolor project, so just ignore those. And all I'm doing is actually just making a swirl in each of these colorful circles that we made initially with our sponge brush. And that's just a really basic way to make a rose. It's not super detailed, but it really looks nice in this design and keeps it kind of simple. I did notice that it did sometimes feel like it was running out of paint, so I did a few extra coats, I guess, or just filling in spaces where it felt like it wasn't covering well enough. So just make sure that you have a nice outline of those swirls. I also add a little, I don't know, stem, middle piece to the leaves and outline them. Can you see the outline? No, but it just felt like it was necessary since the flowers were outlined. I don't know. It just didn't feel complete without it. So I did add an outline there. And I covered up a little bit more than I wanted to with one leaf, so just fixed it. So now I am moving on to make my spider webs out of this silvery glitter tulip fabric kind of puffy paint. I just bought this at Walmart. It comes in all sorts of different colors. I really enjoy using the glittery ones, so when it dries, it's kind of like Elmer's glue. So it looks foggy when you apply it, but then it dries clear with just all that fun glitter. So you guys have seen me do this in other tutorials or DIYs, but I'm just making some webs. I'm starting out from the outer end only because I want it to be a little bit thicker and then lightening up as I get towards the pinpoint or that intersection point. Because otherwise if you do it too thick there, it just gets kind of blobby. And making little U-shapes to connect them all. Then I felt like it was unbalanced, so I am just adding some little tiny dots around my flowers to make it look cute. Like I said, I ended up distressing the shoulders a little bit more, and now all we have to do is wait for the fabric paint to dry. So this is what it looks like when it's completely done. I absolutely love how it turned out. You can see that these spider webs turn out nice and glittery. I've got all my distressing done down here at the bottom. And yeah, I just think it turned out super cute and I can't wait to try it on. Okay, this is how she turned out, you guys. I think it turned out so cute. I added a little bit of extra kind of cuts and rough stuff around the shoulders to just make it feel more balanced. It's like the art school nerd in me to make things balanced. But yeah, I think it turned out so awesome. Yes, I'm standing on my squatty potty, but I don't care. And honestly, like, this does not have to be something that you only wear in Halloween season. This could be so cute all year round because it doesn't have anything specific to Halloween. It's just some roses and some nice webs. I mean, you could definitely like spice it up a little more if you want it to be more Halloween-y, but I love that this is kind of applicable all year round.
And the colors did fade a lot. Like if you could tell from the video earlier, the colors definitely faded. But honestly, at first I was kind of disappointed, but I'm not so mad. I feel like it gives it a little bit more of a vintage look. And if it was super bright, I just think it would stand out too much. So I kind of like that it faded into these more muted, dull kind of colors. So yeah. I'm super excited with how this turned out. I'm feeling a lot better today. It is a day or two later since when I started this. And I am on antibiotics, so we feeling good. And yeah, thanks for joining me, you guys. And thanks so much for your support and for being willing to hold the space while I'm not feeling well and continuing to support my channel. If you haven't already, make sure you do like and subscribe. It really helps to support me and my channel and to continue this journey. So thanks. Bye, guys.
Our first DIY is this gorgeous birchwood, like, platter, serving tray, candelabra. I don't know what to call it, but I'm obsessed with how it turned out. I found this at a Dollar Tree in Taos, which is about an hour away from me. I've never seen it at any Dollar Tree ever, so as soon as I saw it, I knew I had to make something with it. And I got this birchwood idea and technique from another channel, which I will link below. It is from Hot Humble Pie's channel. It's like an easy DIY birchwood, I think it's called. I'll link it. But anyways, I basically use her technique. I do it a little bit different, only in the fact that I use a little bit less tape, which is what I'm doing here, is wrapping my area that I'm going to make into birchwood with tape. And then I did use slightly different colors than she had, just because she had mentioned specific colors, and I just used whatever I had on hand. So here you can see I'm just making sure to wrap my masking tape around. I think I did maybe 2 layers, but making sure to cover all the areas that I want to look like birchwood. So there you can see it up close. And now I'm just smoothing out all those little wrinkles, because they actually end up adding a lot of texture and look a lot like birchwood in real life. Then I'm pouring out my Waverly paints. I'm using my Waverly white chalk paint, and I'm using some of the antique wax, although I'm first starting with just the white paint. So what we're going to do is coat our candelabra or tray or whatever you want to call it, but we're going to just do 1 coat of the white chalk paint from Waverly. This is one of the small differences between her video and mine, is I just did 1 coat instead of 2. I just felt like birchwood isn't super bright white, and actually my honey's an arborist, and I asked him what he thinks, and he was like, yeah, it looks pretty good. So I just coat it once. Because of the masking tape, I think because it's not a smooth surface, it was a little bit difficult to get all of that paint around, but just make sure you do 1 nice coat and get it into all those little nooks and crannies and wrinkles as well. Once that is basically dry, or at least I thought it was dry, it kind of was a little wet, but it actually ended up working in my favor. I'm just going to take a chippy brush along with the antique wax from Waverly, and I'm going to dry brush it across all areas of my piece. Now you don't want an even coat, because you do want it to have some nice texture, and remember that not all trees are perfect and they all have a lot of different bark in different areas. So I'm just dry brushing it all around and emphasizing it in certain areas. So I leave some that are pretty plain and white, but other areas I like to add a little extra darkness just to get that extra emphasis on the texture. After that, I'm going to use some regular black paint and a little bit of my antique wax again, and just mix a little bit together. You really don't need much. I would recommend using a little bit more of the wax than the black, just so it doesn't get too dark too fast. And I'm brushing some of it off because I don't want it to be all gloppy on my piece. And I'm making these little like horizontal lines or dashes, which again just add to that birchwood texture. So I go around, and again, I don't want this to be perfect, so I'm just placing them randomly and placing some close together, some further apart, and just kind of seeing what looks good. This is a part too where it kind of started to blend with the white, but I didn't like it as much, so I do go back around and kind of darken some of those pieces up. Now to add just a little extra color or weight to it as well, I'm using that same brown and black mix and just dry brushing it across the bottom of the birchwood. I just think it kind of makes it look more finished or weighted at the bottom. Um, so yeah, that's what I'm doing here. And now you can see a close-up of what it's looking like so far. I was really impressed with how this was turning out at this point. Okay, this is the most time-consuming part. We are going to just take some hot glue and some jute or rope. I honestly don't know the difference. I'm just learning these names as I am exploring more on YouTube. But we are taking this cord or jute or rope and gluing it around the entire bottom of this dish. We're not going to do that kind of candlestick looking part or that stem, just that flat bottom piece. So just so it's not too painful, I am going to skip through and just show you parts of my progress because this does take quite a long time. This project in general didn't take very long, it's just this part that was time consuming. So again, I'm just going to show you this in phases so you can see the progress a little bit more magically because it is not that graceful watching that entire process. Once again, my hot glue gun burned me several times, so I have seen those cool little like silicone, I don't know, like fingertip protectors for hot glue on other people's channels, but I cannot find them at any of my Dollar Trees. I have seen a few of them and I just cannot seem to find it. So, if you happen to be a Dollar Tree hoarder and you have an extra one, I would love to have one. If not, no big deal. As I'm going around here, I did notice too that the more I glued down areas more consistently, the better it stuck. So for example, like in the beginning, I would skip little areas, but then it almost looked like I had a gap. So I definitely ended up realizing that I need to pretty much glue down every single area. I was trying to save myself some glue just by trying to skip those areas, but it turns out way better if you just do it. It also gets really hard. As you can see, I'm almost right towards the center here, finally almost done. It's really hard to squeeze my little glue gun in there. I mean, I'm glad that I have a small one, but it was pretty difficult. So it was almost like I was just blindly letting the glue drip there and hoping that it will land in a place that would help it stick. I think overall this process probably took, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes. Again, it's not hard, it's just really time consuming. When you get to the end, of course, you can just snip off the extra piece there. So it ends or leaves it nice and flush. And then I just put some extra glue to secure it. And that's how it's looking so far. Now I'm using my Deco Gold oil-based paint marker that, again, I think I've mentioned this in other videos, but I get it from Walmart, but it's sold out often, so I try to pick one up when I find it. But it's so beautiful and reflective and just this gorgeous shiny gold. So I am just really lightly going over the top edge of my holder thing. I really don't know what to call this. But I just wanted this cute little reflective rim to match how we are going to paint the bottom of this object. Here's a little bit of a close-up so you can see what I'm talking about on this night's gold reflection. So admittedly, I did use a coat of some metallic gold paint, acrylic paint first on the bottom, and it was so blotchy and so gross. I tried doing 2 layers and it just did not look good. So to be honest, I gave up and started just using my Deco Art pen on that and just kind of letting it pool up by pressing down on the pen and then just spreading it out with my brush. It did turn out like kind of chunky and textured because of the paint underneath it as well, but I don't mind. I think it really added a lot of character to the piece. And now since I'm using the same pen from the rim of the object to the stem, I think it matches much better. And here's how it looks after everything. Oh my gosh, I think it looks amazing. Okay, number 2 are these super cute name place cards. If you were gonna have friends over for dinner or family, I just think they are so adorable. And since, you know, we really shouldn't be gathering together this year, I think it would also be a great idea to make them anyways and just mail them to your loved ones. So we are actually going to use the back page of one of our Dollar Tree calendars here and a box of their tower blocks or Jenga blocks. I have looked everywhere for these and I'm super excited because I finally found some at a Dollar Tree that was about an hour north of me. So we are going to essentially stain those with antique wax. This is very similar to some designs I've seen on some Dollar Tree crafting groups or sites, as well as other videos. So this is not an original idea, just in the sense of decorating these cute little blocks and, well, yeah, just making them cute. So here we are just staining our blocks, and we are going to do this to however many you need. It's going to take 3 blocks for each one of the place cards or place cards. I don't know what they're called. But anyways, you'll need 3 for each. Once you've got them all stained, you're just going to use a hot glue gun to glue them together. You could use wood glue or something else, but this is just quick and easy, and it does the job for something so small and simple, and doesn't need to be terribly sturdy. So again, you're just going to glue 3 blocks each together. If you can see there, I didn't stain the sides of some of mine just because I knew they were going to be glued, and it just saved me a little bit of time. Then you're gonna take your back of your calendar where it's got all those like tiny pictures or previews of what each month has for an image, and you're gonna pick out whichever ones you like or whichever ones speak to you, or I think it'd be really cute to kind of personalize it in the way that you pick one specific out that reminds you of the person that you would give it to or whose name would be on it on the table. Then I am just cutting them down a little bit because I want them to have a little bit of that wood edge on these little place cards. I don't want the picture to fill up the whole thing just because I think it's such a beautiful color. So I am just trimming it up to make sure that it is the right size, and then again I am just hot gluing it onto that. You could use another glue or Elmer's glue or whatever you have on hand. This again is just quick and easy, so that's why I'm using it. Do be careful, it does get pretty hot through the paper, but just try your best not to burn yourself like I do all the time. So again, this is my second one. I just made 2 for this DIY, but again, I think this would be so cute if you just send it to tell your friends or family or the people you'll be missing this Thanksgiving or Friendsgiving. I personally love going to Friendsgiving with my friends because, I don't know, it's just a nice time to have all these people you love together, and there's been times in my life where my friends are certainly my family. Now, just to add a little bit of something special, we are taking more of that jute or rope or whatever you want to call it, and I first measured it around my blocks to make sure I had the right size, and then I cut 2 of that size, or you would cut as many as you needed for yours. And I just hot glue it along all of the sides of my little place card. So I am going to do this to both of them. I do make sure to glue like down the whole side. I'm not just putting a dot or 2. I am gluing around all the sides, and then I snip off anything that could be extra. This is turning out so cute. I can't wait for you to see the next part, which is the real personalization of this DIY. So you're going to flip it over. I'm using my gold paint pen again. You can use a Sharpie, you could use your Cricut, you could use stickers, but you're just going to write the name of the person that it's going to belong to on the back. I think this is such a fun idea because if you were having in-person Thanksgiving or Friendsgiving, you could place them with the quote up on their plate and they would have to kind of go around the table and find out which one is theirs. I think that would be such a fun little addition or tradition to this feasting day. So the first one I just did in all caps, and this one I'm doing in cursive just to show you that you could kind of be creative in however you want to write it. And this is how they turned out! Oh my goodness, so adorable. I love it. Our third one is this adorable sign that you could put up. I made this one again especially just for Friendsgiving, but you could put family instead of the word friends. We are starting out with this large gold decorative plate or platter from Dollar Tree and some Waverly white chalk paint. I am just using a chippy brush to layer one coat of the paint on here. I do want it to look a bit more distressed. I think it's actually pretty crazy. For once I made some really rustic looking DIYs and not just like crazy colorful, but that's just kind of the colors I think of when I think of Thanksgiving. So again, I am just being really uneven, kind of messy with this, just making sure to go in a circular motion just like the plate. The only thing I'm careful about is I do try to scrape it off if it goes over the edge, which you can see I'm doing here. You could also use a paper towel for them. Then I made this decal or vinyl phrase with my Cricut. This was a special font where the words friends is. It's a special font from, I think, fontbundles.com or something like that, but it is a free one. And it comes with those cool little glyphs at the end, or those leaves, which I absolutely love, and I just thought it would be great here. This was actually inspired by a sign I saw at Dollar Tree because I really loved the phrase friends gather here, and it had some, like, I don't know, I think pumpkins and leaves and stuff around it, and I just thought like I could totally make that even better and cuter, so that's where that inspiration came from. So I'm just pressing down, making sure that my vinyl sticks. I don't know what I did different, but this is the first time that it was actually easy for me to work with my Cricut. Now I'm taking some of these fake leaves from Dollar Tree that I bought, I don't know, probably a month ago. They probably don't have anything like that left at the Dollar Tree, but you could cut up felt or something else, or maybe paint some on. But I'm just kind of looking to see how I want to arrange them on my plate. I do make the focal point on the bottom, the gold leaf, just to add that extra pizzazz because I do love color, as I said earlier. Be very careful with hot gluing these because A, it will burn you. B, as you'll see with these little yellow ones that I'm placing now, it like, I don't want to say color came through, but you can see some of the hot glue like peeking through, which I really didn't like and I end up fixing later. But anyways, just be really careful about how much hot glue you're using and how hard you're pressing down. I thought I would speed up some of this process for you a little bit quicker just because I am quite indecisive, so it does take me a little bit to figure out how I want my placement and how I'm going to put my leaves. The top, I actually originally wasn't going to put leaves there, but it just really felt like it was missing something without having something there. So I do end up putting some leaves there and having a little bit of that gold just peeking underneath the other colors to offset or balance, I guess not offset, but balance the gold from the bottom. Now again, like I said, I really didn't like that hot glue showing through, so I ended up layering more yellowish, orangish leaves on top, just so that it kind of hides that, which worked perfectly. Once you're done with that, you're going to use some more of that jute or rope or whatever, and just tie a regular old bow on it. I just think, even though it was simple, it just looks perfect here. This DIY was literally so quick and so easy, but so incredibly stunning. I was so proud of myself when I made this. I couldn't believe it. So once you've got your bow tied, you can just take some of that hot glue. I'm struggling here because I'm at the bottom of my last hot glue stick. I'm trying really hard to push it through, and you're just going to glue it to the top of your plate. And that's it. Look how absolutely gorgeous this turned out. I can't believe it. Started with this cute little pumpkin fella, so let's jump into it. Okay, so here is what you need. We have got some embroidery hoops, some cute Halloweeny fabrics, some felt, scissors, your hot glue gun, and your delicious hot toddy. So, there are two different types of embroidery hoops here. There's a plastic orange one, which is perfect for this from Walmart, and then this embroidery hoop that is made of bamboo that you could totally paint yourself. So I ended up choosing the orange embroidery hoop and the skeleton gray fabric. I thought it would be really fun and a little spooky for this project, so I am going to use those two for this example. Oops, time for a shot, my bad. Cheers! Anyways, back to crafting. So I'm just laying my embroidery hoop on the fabric and then cutting around it. So eventually what I'm going to do here is cut it close to size, maybe off by like an inch or two. And I am going to use a marker, or you could use a pen, whatever would show up for you on your fabric. So I'm just kind of eyeballing it, but of course you could measure it if you wanted to. And then I'm going to cut that piece out. By the way, I'm using the inner embroidery piece, not the outer piece that has the little bit of hardware on it. That's because it's going to cover that and then be slid in between the two embroidery hoops. So I am just cutting away on my piece of fabric here. And then I'm going to lay it on top of the inner piece. Yep. And not that one. And then I'm going to open the top part as wide as possible without disconnecting the two pieces, or the pieces of the hardware. Kind of smush it on there. Sometimes it takes a little bit more oomph. Some of them are easier to fit on. So I'm going to smush that in between there, and then I'm going to twist the hardware a little bit, pull all the edges of that fabric, and then continue tightening it until the whole thing feels nice and taut. I am just trimming the excess around the edges now, because I don't want a whole bunch of fabric sticking out. So just get rid of that stuff. So then you're going to pick out which felt you would like for your jack-o'-lantern face. I ended up deciding that I wanted to use both the dark green and the light green. I just thought that contrast would look really nice on that dark background. So off camera here, I am just drawing some little triangle eyes, which I end up deciding to add a little eyeball in and then cutting that piece out. So here I am fixing it and cutting out the piece. I just folded my felt to make it easier to cut. That way I don't have to do twice the work. Once I've got those cut out, I'm going to trace it onto my light green piece, again with my marker. And then once I've got those cut out, I'm going to cut out that little eyeball piece in the middle that I'm drawing right now. That way when I glue them together, you can see the dark green in the background. You'll see in a minute what that turns out looking like. All right, so here we've got our two little green pieces that we're going to glue on top of the dark green. So I am just going to grab my hot glue gun, start putting that onto the green piece. Then I'm going to very successfully burn my finger and fling that little piece away. I have officially lost my piece during the burning process. Yep, still searching several minutes later. Where, oh where could my little burnt piece be? All right, well, moving on with my life, I am going to glue the other one onto my dark green triangle, and then, ta-da, I end up finding my little piece stuck to some paint. So then I glue that one onto the other triangle. I know that I have a high temp hot glue gun, but this one is like unnecessarily hot. Like no hot glue gun ever needs to be this hot. So I'm pretty sure I burned myself at least once more, but at least I've got my cute little eyes done, and I am just kind of eyeing out where I want them on my embroidery hoop. Okay, moving along, we are drawing out our smile for our jack-o'-lantern. Again, we are first cutting it out with the dark green piece, and then we're going to trace it onto our light green piece, just making some adjustments to add the teeth for our smile. So I am just seeing what that would look like, getting distracted by my delicious drink, and then moving along. So here you can see I am starting to sketch out my smile onto the light green piece. I did trace the shape, of course, from the original one that I cut out of the dark green, and then I just added some teeth. I do want to point out that the top of your pumpkin or jack-o'-lantern should be where that hardware is because we're going to cover that with the stem of the pumpkin later. So make sure that that's at the top. So now I am just cutting out my light green piece to make sure that I've got all the parts I've drawn out nice and cut, and then I'm going to layer it onto the dark green piece. Perfect. Okay, for like a second, I wasn't sure if I liked it or not, so I tried cutting out just the triangles from my original drawing and seeing if I like that, and nope, I ended up not liking it, but I'm moving on to pretending like I do, and apparently burning myself some more. No surprise there. So I am still toying with this other idea of just gluing the teeth, which I ultimately decide not to do. It's not a bad idea, it just was not what I was looking for, so I ended up going back to my original thought and gluing on that jagged light green piece to the other one. Here I am using my demon gun again to glue down my smile. So now I've got my piece and I am layering it onto the dark green part of the smile, pressing it together, and then I'm going to take my scissors and just kind of trim up any extra edges that might be hanging off and start placing my smile on there. After this, I thoroughly get confused, wondering where my hot glue stick was, and then quickly resolve it by getting distracted by alcohol. Perfect. And we're back. I cut out a nice chunk of me not knowing where to find my glue stick and then finally found it. So now I am just hot gluing the back of all my pieces onto my fabric on my embroidery hoop. If you wanted this to be a little more stiff, you could of course just take a thin piece of like cereal box cardboard or something and place it into the back, but I kind of just liked it how it was, so I just did it that way. And I know that I'm not going to be placing anything where it will be poking through, so just having it on the fabric works perfectly fine for me. Looking good, looking good. This is Sparta. And we're back. So next I am just cutting out a piece for the stem of my pumpkin or my jack-o'-lantern. I realized it ended up being a little bit too small, so I just trim it up to the size I need to be, measure it up, and then I put it onto the other piece of felt to copy it and make a backside. I'm leaving the bottom curved since it will be curving around the edge of the embroidery hoop anyways. So I am cutting out the back half of the very same piece, and then I'm going to work on gluing them onto my hoop. Cool, so now I am just putting some glue on the felt, or you could put it directly on the hoop and just placing it onto our pumpkin carefully without burning ourselves. And then I'm going to do the same on the back side. So on the back side, like I said, you can just put it directly on the hoop and that will work perfectly fine. And then I just press that on and glue the tops together. If yours fit around the edges on the sides, you can do that too. And there it is. Look how cute that is. Again, you can use the bamboo one, paint the edges, use different fabric. I don't know why, I was really feeling the skeleton fabric, so I was excited about that. So here's our first little cute pumpkin decor DIY. Let's move on to the next one. Number 2 is this super cute pizza candy corn pumpkin. Okay, first things first, I need to go outside and spray paint this black, but before that, what I'm going to do is use some painter's tape, wrap up this little stem, just because we don't want this to change colors. We actually want it to stay green. And, you know, this is just a Dollar Tree pumpkin, so if it gets ruined or whatever, I can always paint it back over. And actually, let me try something. I think I've seen people pull these out. Genius. Never mind, no tape needed. I'm gonna go outside and spray paint this and we'll be back. So while we're waiting here, we are just gonna take some dark green paint and our little stem and a small brush and just paint that. We want to make sure that the texture of our stem matches the texture of our pumpkin, since that will be painted as well. Okay, so our pumpkin is spray painted and ready, and I'm going to reuse this old styrofoam plate that I always use for my acrylic paints. If you don't know, you can let it dry and paint right on top, or even just peel off the paints, which is what I'm explaining in all this craziness. So I've got some green, yellow, red, some darker red, some white, and I do end up eventually adding a little bit of orange as well. So I'm sticking my stem right back into my little pumpkin, setting that aside. And I've switched over to wine because I ran out of cider. And I am going to start painting. So I am mixing up the colors that I feel like would be perfect for a crust. So I'm using some yellow, a little bit of that kind of burgundy color, and some white, and I'm going to paint that. So I'm going to start by painting little edges of crusts you'll see in just a minute. I'm painting them just as a line and kind of imagining what angle that they would be painted at. So I do this with 2 coats, and I also do 2 coats of just plain white triangles for the candy corn. Alright, so I went ahead and skipped showing you that, but here you can see I have all my base for my candy corn, and I'm starting to make the base for the cheese of my pizza, which is just white and yellow paint. I believe I end up doing 2 layers of this as well. If you have opaque enough paint, you should be totally fine with just 1 layer. I was just using regular cheap crafters paint, and so it did take a little bit. And I think my spray paint might have been a little bit wet, which was also making it difficult to do. So yeah, I did 2 layers of the crust, the white part, and the cheese. Okay, so we've got all of our double layers of that done. I'm now using my burgundy-ish color and a small but flat brush just to make my little pepperonis. And so I am just putting them on each of the cheese slices and making little circles. I didn't mind if the light yellow paint got into it too much, just because it added a little bit of texture, but you just want to make sure that you randomly place them and put some that are half on and half off your slices of pizza, just because that's how it would look naturally. They're not evenly spaced out on delicious pizza. Fun fact, I actually don't really like pepperoni, but I knew it would really get the point across in a nice, simple way without having to draw a bunch of other toppings. Alright, we are looking good, and so now we're just adding some plain yellow onto the middle section of our candy corn. Since we have that white undercoat or base coat, it should be fine with just 1 layer. So that's what I'm doing here, just taking some yellow and filling in the middle part of my candy corn. I'm sure it is no surprise that we are now going on to the orange part. So as you can see, I did add some orange paint onto my plate that I didn't have originally. I probably just forgot. So I am now painting the base or the bottom of my candy corn orange. The particular orange I had was a little bit translucent, so I might have done a second coat. Again, it really just depends on the paint you're using as to whether it's opaque enough to do 1 layer or if you have to do 2 layers. So just go around and fill all those bottom parts orange. Okay, our pumpkin's looking super cute, but it felt like it needed something extra, so I'm adding these little bling rhinestones that have adhesive backing that are from Walmart. They come in a big sheet, but I happen to cut these ones into little strips, and I am just randomly putting them around my pumpkin for some extra bedazzle. I really like fun, sparkly things, and this just fit perfectly with our little pumpkin. Oh my gosh, look how cute it turned out. I just love it. All right, we are 2 crafts down. We've got 2 to go. So I've got 1 pumpkin decoration left for this pumpkin decorating challenge, and I've got 1 craft left. So we will move on to the next one. Number 3 is this super cute little pumpkin jack-o'-lantern candle holder. What you need for this is some Mod Podge. I'm using matte, but you could of course use glossy. I've also got this kind of fishbowl candle holder I got from Walmart, but you can also buy them at Dollar Tree, and some orange tissue paper. We end up using black paint later as well for the face of it. So what I'm doing initially here is I am taking my scissors and my orange tissue paper and just cutting little strips up. So after I've got my strips, what I'm going to do is stack them up and cut them into little squares or rectangles. This is totally kid-friendly too. If you just want to have them rip up little tiny pieces, it'll still look absolutely adorable. I've done this with kids before and they love the messiness of the Mod Podge and just tearing up the little pieces of paper. So as you can see, I'm just stacking up my strips and I now am cutting them into little squares or rectangles, which will be Mod Podged onto our glass bowl or candle holder. So then you're going to take your Mod Podge and just go section by section, applying it to your candle holder. If you do it all at once, your Mod Podge will likely dry before you're able to apply it, so just do it section by section. Here I'm leaving a little bit of a lip at the top just to be safe. I don't want any tissue paper hanging over and accidentally getting burnt by my candle. So then you just take your little cute squares and start applying them. You can do a pattern or just spread them anywhere like I did. The only really aligned part is the top and the bottom to make sure it fits perfectly. So as you can see here, I've fully coated my entire candle holder with the tissue paper, and now I'm putting an extra layer of the Mod Podge on top. You want to make sure it's nice and sealed and that there aren't very many bubbles. It's definitely hard at first because all the little flaky edges want to lift up, but just try to pat them all down as best you can. And with a little bit of magic, you can see I have fully coated my candle holder in the Mod Podge. So then I'm going to let it dry for a few minutes before I move on. Ta-da! She is all nice and dry. So now I am just taking some black acrylic paint and a little brush and creating my jack-o'-lantern face. Again, I really like the kind of traditional one, so I'm just doing the typical triangle eyes and a cute little mouth with some teeth. So here you can see I am outlining where I want the mouth to be. If you don't want to jump right in with the paint, you can obviously just use a pencil and lightly mark it. I'm not sure if it will erase or not, so just try to mark it really nice and light before you outline it with your black paint. I always outline it first and then fill it in, and then check if there's any mistakes afterwards. So after I've got that all filled in, his face is absolutely complete. Let's check out how he looks. Looking good. Absolutely adorable. So our final step is just to put a little candle in there and light him up. I don't know if you can see that, but love the glowing center. So much fun. Let's move on to number 4 and our last pumpkin decorating craft. Number 4 is this super cute bedazzled cacti pumpkin. What you're going to need is a white pumpkin. If you don't, obviously just paint one white. And I've got some small clear rhinestones and some big colorful ones and some paint. Now I'm just looking to see which side I think is best to be painting this cacti on. If you aren't sure about what you want it to look like, or you're a little bit nervous about the shape, you can of course just look a picture up on Google or print it out and kind of eye it up that way. I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted mine to look like, so I'm just kind of freestyling it. Once I have found the perfect spot that I want to put my cactus, I am just going to take a small brush and some dark green paint and start outlining it. So on my palette here, I've got dark green paint, light green paint, almost like a lime green, some yellow, and some white. And I am just making the outline shape of what I want my cactus to look like. The cool thing about this is because the pumpkin isn't really a porous surface, if you feel like you screw up, you can always fix it. So I'm just taking a paper towel, a little bit of water, and just scrubbing off the area that I felt like I wanted to redo. Super simple and easy, and you can't even tell. Then I'm just going back over it and fixing it the way that I want it to be. So I've got my little cacti going here, and as soon as he's outlined, we can start painting it. Okay, now I'm taking a fat brush, trying to focus it, and then I'm going to dip it in both the green paint and the lime green paint to kind of get both colors going in there. It just adds a nice variety in the color and almost makes it seem a little bit more maybe three-dimensional, or just adding a little extra touch to it. I also try adding in a little bit of yellow. It doesn't show up much, so I do end up highlighting a little bit of yellow again later. I thought I would speed around this part just because it's all the same color, just going into the same areas. And then for those smaller little knobs on top, I do use a smaller brush just to make sure that I'm not making any big errors outside of the lines that I had originally painted. All right, now we are taking some yellow and some white in a small brush, and we are just going to use this to help highlight some of the top curvy areas of our cactus. Just kind of helps it, again, make it look a little bit more realistic and yet at the same time a little more painterly. So we're just adding some nice highlights and a bit of texture. It is looking so good so far. There it is. I'm going to let it sit and dry before the next part. Okay, now you can see that I'm putting a little bit of pink paint on there. I found some little flowers around my house that I wanted to add to the tops instead of painting them on. So I'm taking a light pink and a like rosy metallic pink and kind of just brushing the ends because I did want a little bit of pink in there. I just felt like that was the color that would complement it best. So now we've got a mix of both that original orange and a little bit of the pink at the tips. I think it kind of adds a little bit of extra detail to our pumpkin piece, and it doesn't seem so cookie cutter that way. Adds a little personalization, you know? Now I am just using my hot glue gun to stick them on there. I did try sticking them in with just the stems, and it was a little bit difficult to push in. So I just snipped off the bottom, and I'm just hot gluing them onto my cactus. It actually held pretty well. I think I had to fix one of them once right after gluing it, but other than that, it looks pretty awesome. Now I'm using some of the large green rhinestones off this sheet I bought from Walmart, and I'm just using them to outline my cactus. The nice thing is they are attached almost as if they're on a string, so I can peel off a few at a time and work on it that way. They seem to stick pretty well on their own, so I didn't end up using any glue for this part. So this is where we're at. She is looking good, but I'm going to use more of those little mini bling rhinestones and just put them all over in random places on my cactus to look like the little needles that stick out of them. Obviously, this is a more glamorous way to have little pokey things on a cactus, but I think it ends up looking super cute. If you don't like this part, you can obviously just leave it with the painting and the flowers for more of a rustic look like Unicorn Dust Designs does in a lot of her crafts, but I really like the shiny stuff, so I'm adding all the bling. I ended up feeling like the flowers just weren't really matching the personality of the cactus, so I have this glitter kind of acrylic medium that I'm just sprinkling on there to make it a little extra shiny. And that's it, you guys. Look how cute she turned out. She is still out in my living room, and I just love how it turned out.